Being a magic user is probably one of the most fun things you can do in Dungeons & Dragons and TTRPGs altogether for the reasons of, well, I have the power of the universe! Pretty much. But the downside is that once you really run out of spell slots, you're pretty much only left with cantrips, and not many options. Especially early level, you may not really feel all that useful to the party. Well, in those instances, it's time to go Gish. Now, I just used a word that, quite frankly, sounds made up. And in many cases, it is. To quote Thor,
"All words are made up."
Well, that's partially true. There's a lot of linguistic history as to why certain words exist.
No! God, please, no! No!
I'm getting off topic again. Anyway, Gishes refer to what we would call battle mages. These are individuals that are proficient in using magic and martial type abilities in combat to great effectiveness. The term Gish specifically derives from Githzerai in AD&D when they first showed up, as they were really well known for using magical and arcane magic in conjunction with one another to proficient and oftentimes deadly means. And so naturally, with most terms over time, words began to be shrunken down, so rather than being referred to Githzerai, builds that focused martial and spells would oftentimes be called Gishes, which is really ironic considering Elf in D&D Basic is technically the first martial magic user type class. And the reason why I specify Elf and not something like, let's say, Cleric from original Dungeons & Dragons is that there's an important distinction between Gish type builds. In order for a Gish to really be a Gish, they can only use arcane magic and martial type abilities. So I'm sorry, clerics, paladins, and rangers, you're technically not Gishes in the traditional sense. So yeah, in terms of the traditional meaning, you have to be an arcane caster and use martial weapons with great proficiency. So in D&D 5e terms, you don't have to go far to find a build that will be worthy of being called a Gish, or in this instance, a battle mage. Bard alone can be considered a Gish in terms of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition because they are proficient with some martial weapons. However, they have two archetypes specifically designed for this type of role in combat. Then you also have the Blade Singer Wizard, the Arcane Trickster Rogue, and the Eldritch Knight Fighter. And yes, I know technically the Arcane Archer could count, but basically what I'm counting as a Gish is that it needs to have spell slots available to the class. If there are no spell slots, then it's not a Gish. The next question is, why even play a Battle Mage type character? Well, the good news is that especially in systems like Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, is that it is incredibly easy to make a character that can use magic and weaponry and make it work. The downside for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, though, is that you're really going to be bouncing back and forth with action economy. So you're going to need to really figure something out in order to make the build absolutely work. But it can be done and you're always going to be useful. And that is the greatest benefit to being a battle mage type caster in D&D 5e, is that when you run out of spell slots, you can still swing at things. You do have something like the Blade Singer Wizard that still uses a d6 for their hit die, but their armor is boosted. But still, you're not going to be able to take that many hits as a Blade Singer. That's why personally I like to pair Eldritch Knight and Blade Singer together. The two archetypes work incredibly well together, and plus on top of that, you get the wizard abilities for arcane recovery and also the ability to add more spells to your spellbook. They can only be at first level depending upon how high you go as a Blade Singer, but since you have the D10 hit die of the fighter on top of you, you'll be able to take more hits, your AC will be boosted incredibly, and honestly, you'll be rather proficient. But as stated, the biggest con against being a battle mage type character, especially in something like D&D 5e, is that action economy is going to be rather weird. You really have to think about what you are going to do. So people who don't like complicated builds or really planning things out, this may not be the best path for you. Because you will need to think out your turns a lot more because you will have more things at your disposal that your character can do. And this means spells, when things count as concentration, when they don't, what things work well together. You're really going to have to think it out. And so for people who really like to plan, this is how you can get your enjoyment in D&D 5e. And especially if your Dungeon Master allows multi-classing, well, then you can pair something like Fighter and Sorcerer and have a lot of fun. Because meta magic combined with Fighter Action Surge can be really fun, and you can potentially even get off 3 spells in 1 turn in this method. And that's honestly just a lot of fun to think about. You can also pair it with other abilities to draw enemies close and then take a swing at them. It's really interesting to see how a sorcerer fighter or really a wizard fighter or what have you combined with each other can really change up combat and how things are played out. It can dramatically change the battlefield. It's one of the reasons why they can also tend to be lean toward power gamers, but there's also a lot of reasons, even narratively, why someone would want to become more of a battle mage. Perhaps they are just tired of only swinging and they see all of their magic companion party members being able to be incredibly useful in combat, and they want to feel a little bit more of that, so they decide to start studying, maybe talk to their wizard companion, or potentially even make a pact, and thus going into Warlock, which Warlocks are arcane casters, so yes, that method you technically are still able to be called a Gish. But for me, one of the reasons why I love this type of build is, outside of just feeling useful at all times, I just love the imagery of it. It is incredibly evocative of what I think about when I think of fantasy, and specifically high fantasy or even sword and sorcery fantasy that Dungeons & Dragons is absolutely known for. The idea of someone having a staff and a sword, Gandalf style, being able to take down foes and be proficient with spells and weaponry, even infusing part of their weapons with magical spells, is really just absolutely evocative. It really feels at home within D&D, and to me is the first thing I think of when I think of Dungeons & Dragons magic, is weapons and spells working together in conjunction for fantastical and honestly mind-blowing feats. It's a lot of fun to think about, and something that I really enjoy when I think about Gish or Battle Mage type characters, and is oftentimes why I gravitate toward that area of Dungeons & Dragons. Or other classes that are very similar, like Paladins or Clerics. While Clerics and Paladins are traditionally not Gishes, they definitely do fill the role of being a Battle Mage type character. Again, their power comes from something else other than arcane means, but they fulfill that evocative imagery of someone being on a holy quest and infusing their weapons with magical abilities. It's a lot of fun to think about. So the next time you are getting bored with your character, think about a way to help spice things up. Maybe they're a magic user and you're just getting tired of magic. Think about what martial class they would want to go into to help boost those abilities. Maybe they're a martial character and they're just getting tired of the same old thing. Think about a way to boost those abilities and, well, have them go into being able to cast magic. Talk with your dungeon masters, see if they'll allow it, see if they'll work with you. Come to the idea of why you want to change. If they don't allow multi-classing, then, well, maybe they can allow it to switch classes as a narrative beat of them becoming something else. Again, things like Hexblade, Bladesinger, or several other bard colleges can really help explain this away, and Tasha's does have also explanations as to swapping out subclasses. I don't honestly see any reason as to how this could even extend to classes altogether, or at the bare minimum, just swapping out a character. But again, that is up to you and depends from table to table, but think about what you would want to do to really help spice things up. Maybe it's not a homebrew that is needed, maybe it's just a more unique or interesting build that provides more for your interest. Well everyone, that's the video for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, then please leave a like and comment down below. Let me know what Gish type builds you personally enjoy in your time of playing Dungeons & Dragons. Maybe it was the Elf, maybe it was something from 3.5. Who knows? Comment below, let me know. So until next time everybody, keep rolling those dice.